I really meant to do this sooner in the week, but now's when I'm thinking of it. I was at the computer anyway, so now's when I'll do it. Things have been going pretty well recently. Tonight I finally actually went and got all my quizzes from Japanese class and averaged out my grades and figured out that if the quizzes are a good indication of what I'm doing, I'm getting about 75% in the class and gradually getting better, because the early quizzes were a lot worse than the more recent ones. The more recent ones I'm doing much better on because, well, I guess I'm paying more attention to the vocabulary, maybe? Anyway. Midterms are coming up. So the teachers have been, trying to put the fear into us. This morning, since they said that if you got less than a 60 on your midterm, you'd be deported. Yeah. It was a joke, but still. I don't know. I'm finding Japanese class extremely frustrating recently because the teachers talk down to it. I mean, there's talking Japanese for beginners. That's using simple sentence structures and keeping it to a minimal vocabulary. So that's, Japanese as you talk to beginners. Then there's Japanese as you talk to dumb foreigners, and that's how our teachers talk to us. That includes saying things that they wouldn't say to each other, ever. Every morning, the teacher asks, "Genki desu ka?" which is, "Are you feeling energetic and lively?" And that's not something the Japanese ask each other. They ask dumb foreigners that because that's what dumb foreigners expect them to ask. And then dumb foreigners reply, "Hi, genki desu ka?" Nah, or whatever. And anata, which is just the second person pronoun, you. But Japanese people almost never say it. The primary use of the word anata in the Japanese language is talking to dumb foreigners. The secondary use is when you just absolutely have no way out of it. Like, you're talking to somebody, but you don't remember their name, or maybe you never knew it to begin with, and you can't really think of any sort of appropriate descriptor like, student, or cashier. But you can't completely omit it because then they'll think you're talking about yourself. Because a lot of times you can just omit, when you're talking Japanese, you can just omit the subject entirely. You don't have to say it if it's clear without it. But more often than not, if you omit the subject, you're talking about yourself and not the other person. And so when it comes to that, it's like, well, there's just no other way. I'm going to have to say anata. But otherwise, if you know their name, you don't say anata. If you have some idea of, a description, gakusei-san, Mr. Student, oji-san, old man. Actually not as offensive as it sounds. Unless they aren't that old. I'm sure there are some people who will take offense to that. But you don't say that. And if you can leave it out entirely, that works too. But the teachers apparently don't think we're smart enough to handle that. But it's not really hard. I mean, if anything, it's easier because I am not really being pushed that hard. The homework is, for example, is not hard. There's just a lot of it. And even that doesn't seem as much recently. I guess maybe I'm getting more comfortable with the vocabulary that they use, because it's very different from what I learned in the textbooks I had in Just a kind of a not much overlap in the vocabulary that I learned in America and that I'm using here. And I don't know. It's usually 2 worksheets and 5 or 6 exercises in the workbook, and I can get through a worksheet in like 15 minutes. It's like it's getting to the point where it's not really a big deal anymore. I still bitch about it in the homework, like whenever it's all kind of their own fault, because the homework keeps asking me to what I think about the school or the textbook or just my classes in general. It's like, okay. Yeah, that just comes up in the homework so often. What do you think of your school? Art is going nicely. I'm quite enjoying it quite a bit. A lot of the statues that we've seen are really interesting. There's these 2 they're sort of Buddhist. They're made by Buddhists for a Buddhist temple, but the gods themselves are actually of Hindu origin. But it's just these 2 like sort of war god kind of things, and N, which the way the Japanese alphabet is, those are the first and last characters. That's how they arrange hiragana. So the teacher, said, like, this is from A to Z, and for me the term alpha and omega came to mind, and just these beautifully rendered statues, very, very realistic. And this was 1,500 years ago, something like that. I mean, these are old, but they are amazing. So there's that. And art history was cancelled this week because we're having a field trip, not this weekend, but next weekend, to Nara. And because we're having a field trip, we couldn't have class. Well, we had to cancel a class, and he decided on that one. I kind of feel like canceling next week's class would have been more logical, but, that's just me. Maybe it's just because there's this other thing that Sato-san wants to take me to that day. And it's like, I can't have this class. And he's like, can you skip it? No, if I skip a class, I will... Not only will I lose my scholarship, I will have to refund what they've given me so far, which is something around $3,000. It's like, I can't refund that. I don't have it. And so that's what happens if I cut class. Without like a doctor's notice saying, hey, he was sick. Then it's okay. Maybe if we got a doctor to lie. No. Government and politics is going pretty well. Kind of going slowly. The teacher does not cover as much material as I feel like she'd like to. It's like, oh, I guess we'll have to finish this extra lecture next week, and we always have to finish the lecture next week. Pretty soon we're gonna be like, a full lecture or 2 behind, and we'll just deal with that. I don't know how she's planning to handle that, but I'm sure she'll think of something. Running out of time, but what other classes do I have? Government and politics I just talked about. Political economy, getting pretty interesting. And today he handed out quotes from Dave Barry Does Japan. I know at least Dad knows Dave Barry, and Crystalline might remember Dave Barry. Great quotes that I would like to read to you, but I do seem to be out of time. maybe next time.